journey about our ED almost began almost as I arrived, because we were having a conversation as a management team, and one of the things that came out of it, we felt that ED was a problem we had to crack. That there was so many people coming into the ED, we weren't providing the right quality of treatment, spending a long time in ED, a long time in corridors. A lot of people were really unhappy about that, and we framed it around the granny test. And that was to say that if the care that we were providing wasn't good enough for a member of our own family, we weren't going to provide it for a member of somebody else's family. And that was really the focus that we started off on. It was about saying that at the moment when people are at their most vulnerable, when they come to ED seeking care and attention, sometimes after a major trauma, sometimes after a minor thing, but we're still looking for care and reassurance, that we had to do better than sticking them on a gurney in a corridor for 15 hours.
The original goal of the project, as set by the Ministry of Health and the Minister of Health, to have patients out of EC within 6 hours, 95% of the time. We shaped that goal to something that better suited what we thought was appropriate, and rather than 95%, we focused on all patients moving through the emergency department, unless clinically indicated, because there's a recognition that there are going to be a number of patients on occasions where it's simply not appropriate for patients to move out of the emergency department within the 6 hour period, and that's quite okay. And that was a key moment for us in the process, because it got staff engaged, and the fact that the goal was a clinically led goal became really, really important, and a really important focus point for everybody. It wasn't just a management-led thing and something that was being dictated to us, it was something we could all latch on to.
I've pretty much been through the system about 20 years. And in the past, when you get to ED and present yourself, you get checked in maybe 4 or 5 hours before you get checked in from the front bench, from the front desk. And by the time you get in there, it's that overcrowded. You just get put in sometimes in a corridor, sometimes into a bed space, if you're lucky. But no, even to see a nurse used to take 2 or 3 hours.
2007 I had a heart attack and I was brought here by ambulance. Put in the corridor, I was there for about 5 or 6 hours. Seen no doctor or nobody, no one told me what was happening. I wasn't shown where any toilets were, no food or no drink. Had no pain relief at all. Well, it's a bit scary because you don't know what's happening or how long you're going to be there. It's just not nice sitting in a place where you just don't know what's happening.
They were examining me in the corridor. I kind of felt like my privacy wasn't there, and but at the same time I just wanted to get it over and done with. But it was kind of a bit embarrassing, people walking past me and just staring.
There were patients on trolleys all over the corridor. You couldn't necessarily identify who they were. You didn't have any privacy to either take a history properly, let alone examine them. So it was highly inefficient and rather chaotic, and everyone seemed pretty grumpy.
They come in here and they got moved out of the room to a corridor, and the next patient comes in, and we don't really get a minute or half a minute inside there to get inside the room to give it a good clean. Yeah, it's more like we just go rubbish basics and all that, and there's another patient in. And yeah, which was hard, frustrating.
The purpose of short stay was for short stay patients. We had a criteria that it was for short stay patients, just for overnight, and who are very likely to be discharged the next day, but it wasn't used for short stay. We ended up having patients from the ward, and a few of them were like real short stay patients. During the day and even in the evenings, we had lots of empty beds. And because we had an admission criteria, ED was always overcrowded, but they were mostly ED patients who were to be reviewed after a few hours, like 4 hours, or they were waiting for a procedure like a CT scan or an ultrasound. and they could have come over to us, but we didn't take them because this was a short stay unit and we were taking patients who were going to be here overnight, not the ones who were waiting to be discharged in a few hours. Now when I think about it, I think ED was so overcrowded and there's patients flowing in the corridor and everywhere, and I mean, we could have taken them over just for a short while.
One of the problems we used to have when we had bed block and we couldn't admit patients to the ward and the adult short stay was full is that we were faced with often elderly, frail people in the corridors in the adult department, and the only beds in the hospital to put them in was the paediatric short stay, and this was extremely disturbing and disruptive to our care of these children.
The orderlies had no coordinator, they had no structure. They kind of were just like on their own. There was no caring about them or who did the job or what the job actually was. There was no personalisation.
What we've got here is a problem that exists every single day. We might go for a couple of weeks where everything looks really good, and then something will happen. So, for example, a new group of registrars will come in. So we've got new staff who aren't familiar with the hospital, they're not familiar with the processes in the emergency department, and we'll see a drop in performance.